Hey there, welcome Raj to the Canadian Wealth Secrets podcast. We're excited to have you on today and to kind of dig into your story, your journey, and kind of like get some insight for for our listener today. So, do us a favor, let us know where you're coming from exactly, and just a little bit about your background.
Thank you so much, John and Kyle. Thanks for having me as part of your podcast. It's a pleasure being here and to share about myself and my journey. My name is Raj Loganathan, and I'm the founder and CEO of RexCMR. I'm actually pretty new to Canada. It's been about a year since I moved to Canada, and this whole idea of a startup starting RexCMR, it started about when I came here on a holiday. Uh, we were
Really?
we were in Windsor, uh, out for
Go
out
Windsor.
with our friends. Yeah, at one of the famous Italian restaurant.
Which
We were
one?
sitting
You
there.
never told me that when we were
Oh,
chatting.
Yeah,
Do
that's
famous.
you remember?
Spago's.
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 Yeah,
Nice.
Spago's.
Yeah,
Awesome. What a
Pretty
great
good.
spot.
Great
Shout out to
yeah.
restaurant.
Spago's.
Yeah, so Spago's is where the whole eureka moment happened to me. We were having dinner with a couple of doctors and their families, and this was like a couple of days before I was leaving back to Kuwait. I used to work for a bank in Kuwait at the time, and I was working in strategy and innovation at the time. Um, yeah, so that's where it happened, and these doctors were talking about how difficult the systems are which they use in Canada by the doctors, and eventually led to me asking a question: if you do not have a system which they can move to, and all the existing systems are so cumbersome to use and they are expensive, why don't you guys build it? So when I asked that question, they said they don't have the time for it. And then I asked, why don't we build it? Because you guys, as the physicians, have the knowledge around, the
Hmm.
problem. And I come from a digital banking background, and I spent a lot of time in banks across three continents. So I said, okay, let's build it. And
Great.
one of the doctors turned around and said, his name was Jay. He's unfortunately late. Dr. Jay turned around and said, "Oh, you are leaving in 2 days' time. You go back to Kuwait, you will forget us, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and then we will get back together, something like this. We'll, after some time, we start cribbing about these products which are there out in the market. It's a usual thing which we do. That's where the whole journey started, in terms of RexCMR. And as I was saying, I worked in 8 countries, you know, um, working on mainly banking, payments, digital banking, and cards. Yeah, so that's where I come from, and innovation has been part of my DNA, I would say.
Mm.
Uh, yeah,
I
that's where I am from. Yeah, and
I
I'm
love
originally
it.
from India.
I love it. I love it. So taking everyone back, giving a little context as to, how we met. Some people might think, hey, they know that John and Kyle are from just outside of Windsor, but no, we didn't actually meet here in Windsor. We actually met kind of in a random interaction online. I think it was LinkedIn, and kind of we reached out and had a conversation and hopped on a call. And what I was really intrigued by is the fact, I think you were telling me that you had worked in something like, 3 or 4 or 5 continents, and, you had done a lot of work in different areas as well. So one thing that really hit me was the fact that, some people, when they're starting their first business, right, especially if it's, let's say it's a startup and they have an idea, there's so much to learn. There's so many things that can go wrong. And you had this like vast, sort of experience doing this type of work in so many different areas. I would love for you to kind of take us back a little bit and maybe share some of, we can't get through all of them to here today, but I think it just sort of brings up the legitimacy in terms of the work that you're doing, because you just said a story like, hey, why don't we make it? And then, you part. And then if we end the episode there, a lot of people are going to go, okay, like, good luck. Like, how are you going to do something like that? However, in the banking industry and even in, some other areas. I think there was some, something to do with, politics and voting, digital voting. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects that you've worked on in the past that sort of led you or were maybe stepping stones to starting this particular company that you've been working on currently.
Okay, I'm going to take you back into my memory lane, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to 1999, right? Um, Before 99, I finished university. I studied pharmaceutical chemistry, which has got nothing to do with what I do or what I did in my career. Uh, then I went on to do a diploma in IT. When I started doing the diploma in IT, after I finished diploma in IT, I was working for a small organization, which was actually very niche in what they were doing, right?
Right.
They were working
Okay.
on a first web-based directory. This is in the year 1996, right? These guys were like really ahead of time. They put all the industries like a Yellow Pages, right? They created a online directory. That's where my whole journey started. Like I worked for this small company. And after that, like I left them. They were not doing that great, so I left them. And then the whole idea of putting the Indian elections and covering the Indian elections came up, right? So that's where I would say my whole innovation journey started personally. Um, what happened there was India in 1999. Even the big news channels in India did not have a great coverage of the elections on the web.
Okay.
So 6 months before the elections, we started, like me and my brother and a very close friend of mine, we started covering the elections. We started getting the manifesto of, of the various parties which were in the Indian elections. We had that going on, and we had to cut things short. On the results of the elections, we managed to have 1.9 million hits on the site in 1999. That's like huge at the time, right?
Yeah, that's
Because
huge.
I don't even know if I knew what the internet was
I
in
don't.
99,
Well, I was gonna say, I was like, I don't think it's almost like, was there that many people using the internet in 1999? It was like it was still, it was still somewhat in its infancy
yeah.
compared to now.
So that was fascinating, right? Like I at that time I did not know how enormous this was, right? To today everybody talks about having a million followers and million
Right.
hits and things like that. That's a benchmark, right?
Right.
We had like 1.9 million hits, and like we just I said like, oh, we have done it. That's it. Like, and we moved on. And I then then I got to work for I got headhunted. I went and
Right.
joined a company which was doing work for UK-based projects. Then I moved to UK. That's where my whole journey out of India started, right? And then during this journey, I moved on to working in the banking industry. That's where I moved from being a programmer to a project manager, a small level entrepreneur to becoming a banker.
Right.
Yeah. So the
Wow.
banking journey also was very coincidental that I landed up working in cards and payments, which was very hot at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Credit cards in India was at its very nascent stage, right? So that led me to work for one of the biggest banks. It's called HDFC Bank. They were a startup at the time in terms of their card division. So I was the sixth employee who went and joined that organization. Again, startup, being innovative. These guys were working on cards and payments. They were
Yep.
trying to change the way how the Indian market was working. Then from there, I moved to South Africa. I had met my wife when I was working for GE. Then after that, I moved to South Africa. I worked for a couple of the big banks there.
Right.
And I would actually, talk about one of the banks. Like it's called First National Bank.
Yep.
First National Bank is so innovative. Like they have innovation as part of their DNA, bloodstream, whatever you can call it, right? It's the most innovative organization I work for. it's in most, when you talk about banks, you talk about bureaucracy and how difficult it is, with getting anything done.
Yeah.
These guys worked like entrepreneurial unit, right? Each division was managed in a way that like they could innovate and they could put in any innovation and take it forward. So that helped me shape up my career. When and then I worked in Dubai as well. I worked for Emirates NBD company called Network International, which is basically a third-party payment company, right? What they used to do is they do credit card and payment processing for banks across the Middle East and African region.
Right.
Okay, so there, yeah, I had the opportunity to work again in innovation. I worked on contactless cards, which were not available everywhere in the world, which is chip-based contactless card. We managed to migrate quite a few banks across Middle East and Africa into using and accepting chip-based cards, like, which happened some 5-6 years back in Canada. Whereas this I'm talking about like 2006. Yeah. So that's where the journey went.
Huge.
Yeah. So it gave me an opportunity to work innovating and working on innovative projects across the world.
Yeah, that's you've clearly, you've moved, across the world. You can see this journey that you've taken, moving from, the eastern side of the, the world to
and
the
across
western side.
technology, really, when you really think about it, right? So
I'm
early
curious.
in the internet, and then all to the banking innovation. Like there's so many questions I have. But John, what are you thinking?
Well, yeah, like you've went from one business to the next, and startups here and getting in on the ground floor over here. Like I'm curious, like what is it? Like what is it that you feel is exciting about starting that new business, or like moving into this, like because a lot of people are kind of like, I'm here, I got my job, I'm secure, I don't have to, like, I don't have to worry about where my next paycheck is coming from. And then even if you start a business or you're on the ground floor, some people are like, I'm here, like this is going to be where it is. And it's like, whereas you have moved in lots of different places, like a serial entrepreneur like you are. What to you, like, what is the most exciting part of doing that, of moving from place to place?
I would say I've been a nomad. That's all I can say.
Right.
uh, I, I think a lot of people fear of change, have a lot of fear of change. I strongly believe that like change is only other thing other than death, which is permanent in life, right? Yeah. So change is something which I embrace with both my hands. Took it head on. That gave me the opportunity to work with different kinds of problems around different part of the world, right? It's not the same, right? If you're in a developed market like Europe or like US or North America, US, Canada, the problem is different. Whereas the solution which comes for it as well is very different, and it takes a little bit of more time. Whereas in the markets where I had worked, like for example, if you take like there was a point in time where I worked on electronic banking channels in Africa, right? I was explaining to one of my colleagues recently that in Africa, I was able to work on SMS banking, and from there, whereas like in a market like India, or where there is a presence of these technologies which is already around, it takes a little bit more time to move on from these technology to another technology. Whereas in an African market or a Middle Eastern market, you could do a leapfrog, right? That's what fascinated me, and this opportunity to grow, learn, what fascinated me moving. It is tough. It's not easy moving from one country to another country. One is culturally it's difficult, right? Each country has its own culture. I mean, it takes like to find the right kind of Gouda cheese to buy. It takes a year to figure out when you go to a new country. right?
Sure.
Yeah. So that's what it is. But it's a journey. That's we've been through it. It's hectic. Canada has been not that easy settling in, but it has its own time frame. I think like it takes a little bit longer than other countries where we have gone and worked, because there I was working for somebody else. So from a work perspective, it settles in faster. Whereas here, being an entrepreneur, driving things on my own, being my own boss, has its advantages, also has its disadvantages as well. So that's the
Sure.
part of the game.
Yeah, I must say, when you really think about it and you put your journey into perspective, and then you think about maybe some of the things that we may have considered hard in our own lives. I have never moved countries. I've moved cities before, and that felt hard. And I've never taken massive leaps. We've taken massive leap into our current journey that we're on now, John and I, in terms of income. However, we had sort of been doing this side by side for a really long time to get us to this place of, call it, comfort. My wonder for you is, and you can disclose as much or as little as you'd like here. So, this is totally up to you how far you want to go with it. But this is Canadian Wealth Secrets podcast. My wonder for you is, do you have some sort of like base level of like safety net that you have in terms of knowing that you have a runway that, hey, if something doesn't work out for myself, that I'm going to be okay? Are you on the other end of the spectrum? What, a lot of entrepreneurs have mentioned this, in passing, where they say things like, no, I just knew that I would make it work, like they just make it work. Alex Hormozy's story, he was living in his gym, when he first started, and he lived and slept on the floor of his gym. Like, where would you put yourself, I suppose, on that spectrum in terms of like safety? I know for me, if I was to do that, I would be like, nope, I need to have all kinds of safety net before I was to do something large like that. Are you somewhere on the Alex Hormozy side, sleeping on the floor of the office? Are you on my side, where you're like, actually, no, I want to make sure that I'm going to be okay regardless? Or do you fall somewhere in the middle?
Very interesting question. This is something which I was thinking about, like off late, right, to reflect on the whole journey of where I am, like as in my personal journey, right? You're not like traveling this alone. Like you're taking your family along with it as well, right? You have to be prepared for that. It's not easy to actually leave. As you were saying, like a well-paid job, like with a fancy salary, with all the perks it comes with, and the stability it gives. From there to go to entrepreneur, become an entrepreneur, and be there are like there are really good days, and they will be. It's like you will have 2 good days, and after that you can have like really 4 really bad days, right?
Right.
So it's very important as an entrepreneur to as a start, especially as a startup, somebody who's driving a startup, taking an idea from scratch, to have the self motivation. Very, very important to have that, right? To go from, there are going to be bad days and there are going to be good days. You shouldn't get stuck in that, and then the next day when you go and sleep and wake up, you should be able to say, today I'm going to tell yourself that you're going to have a good day, and then you proceed with it. It's chaotic. There is a lot of issues which comes up, like being part of a startup, and also is that, like, from a financial perspective, right? Like the safety net you are talking about, there is a certain amount of investments, which we have put in, because we completely bootstrapped as an organization, right? There was no investment taken from me, and my partner have pumped in all the money. In fact, like, my partner has invested more than I have done. From my side, it has been the whole idea is what really ticked, right? So when I looked at the whole idea of what we can achieve, is what keeps driving me, waking up to say that, okay, we are there, we are running a marathon, we are there. We are now, I could say, we're running a marathon. Now we are in the last mile
Yeah, I
in
love
terms
that.
of getting it out.
I love that. I love that. You've highlighted a number of really important things, and I think those ups and downs in particular around entrepreneurship. I know, John and I and Matt, one of our he was a co-host for quite some time on the podcast at the beginning. We're all business partners, and there are those days. Like, I think that's how you're in entrepreneurship, right? Where something happens, and I think that's why mindset is so important, to be able to notice and name when you're feeling those ways, because sometimes it's like it could just be a random trigger, like something triggers you and you don't know why. It's not something specific to the business, but just something just is off on that day. And I think that's a really important piece that you shared here. And another piece that sort of came to mind as you were talking was just this idea that I think the more you experience the process of growing a business, and you've done it in a number of different, in a number of different industries and a number of different times, you start to recognize that you actually are building a skill or many skills in many different areas that actually start to feel like a bit of a, like, superpower is the wrong word, but it gives you the confidence that no matter what's happens next, that you'll be okay, because you bring so much benefit to the table, right? Like, thinking about, I'm just picturing, if you come to apply for a job and you're applying for my job because, hey, let's say nothing worked out and you couldn't get it to go or anything like that, who's not going to hire someone who has the experience you do, who has the world experience that you do, who has all of this benefit that you have? It's like, along the journey, as you take this leap, it's almost like you're actually getting stronger and stronger, which means there's less likely a chance of, say, falling on your face, say, financially, or not being able to put food on the table, or any of those things, right? All these irrational thoughts that go through our minds. I'm wondering, are there any sort of, maybe is it books or learning or anything that you've done on the mindset side that has helped you along? Or have you maybe just sort of along the way always been able to navigate it without necessarily having to have some sort of intentional learning around mindset and, vision planning? Or, I'm always curious to hear that for some of these innovators like yourself.
A very tough question to answer, actually. There is no single book or a formula, I would say, which would actually fit in. It's the whole idea of being agile. That's what it is, right? It's the flexibility which entrepreneur needs to have. Uh, it's not a bed of roses, right? It's not easy. It's difficult. There has been many days where I just wanted to quit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just put it back next day. You wake up. You will get bad feedback. Like, there will be critical feedback. You will feel that, like I said, like I didn't put in all these efforts to get this, but you have to take it with a pinch of salt. You get pissed off, but what do you do? Like, you have to go back to the drawing board and then start doing it. Uh, there is something which I tell my team, right? What I tell them is, if you're working for let's say, a big organization like a bank, like a CIBC or somebody, right? Uh, they have their own way of doing things, right? If you are employed with them, for example, like, there is a certain amount of learning you will get. Probably you will be like a horse with the blinkers on. You will get to work in a specific area, and then you will focus on that, and you will become an expert in that area. But when you work for a startup, it goes for me as the founder of the startup, as well as the people working in the team, is that working in a startup, there are so many things you get to learn. The learning curve is exponential, right? Which is not possible working for like a matured organization, right? That's why I spoke very. I was proud of the fact that I worked for an organization like HDFC Bank during the time when they were like really small, right? If I went and worked for them today, it would be very different. right? The learning will not be as much as what I did, right? I got to learn the entire cards and payments industry, where my career took real. It was not a bell curve, right? Like it was like a rocket taking off. That's what it did to my career. Same way, in a the learning potential in a startup is fantastic, right? There are a lot of things which you will not get to do in a bigger organization, you will get to do in a startup.
I love it. I love it. So there's definitely a lot of things. So what I'm hearing from that, I guess my big takeaway is that, there's some people who are maybe more intentional about that journey, but others, it's almost like you're going to learn about mindset or you're probably going to quit. It's probably what it is. It's like you might, it sounds like you've had more of the, you're doing the work and you're learning as you go. You're kind of, flying the plane as you're building it in terms of the mindset piece, but you've also reflected on some of those, some of those important pieces, which I think is really, really critical. So I'm always curious about that, but I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure we have some time to chat about your current project. We talked about a lot of the things you've done in the past, lots of successes. You have experience in early internet sort of, work. I'll call it almost like some virality that you had going on. You've done a lot of work in the banking industry around tech. Now, you had shared your story at the beginning about trying to solve this problem. And I would love to hear a little bit more about exactly what Rex EMR does for a medical professional. And it sounds like, from what I know, based on our conversations, you're serving essentially medical doctors, but like, tell us a little more, give us an elevator pitch. What are you trying to achieve? And, how can people find more information about it? So tell us a little bit more about what Rex EMR does.
What Rex EMR does is to bring various products which the doctors are using in one platform. Why I'm saying various products is the if you look at the banking industry or if you look at the telecommunication industry, okay, let's take like the smartphone which you use today. Probably 20 years back, you were carrying a camera with you, you were carrying a phone or a mobile phone with you, where you can text and make calls. Yeah, and notepad. Then you were probably carrying a GPS with you. These all things came together and they converged into being one product. That's missing in the healthcare industry, I would say. Doctors are using various different products, and it is actually the technology being used by the doctors is a bit old-fashioned, very delayed. There are some products which are there, which are very, very stable. There are like market leaders who are there in the Canadian market who have developed a product over a period of time. But if you look at their user interface, it looks like a program which was written when I was a programmer in the 90s, when I started my career as a programmer in the 90s. So that's what it looks like. And what we have done in Reximar is to beat that. We have come back to the leapfrog phenomenon. We didn't actually have to build an old-fashioned product and then make it into looking good. We were able to build a product which is cloud-based, AI-powered, completely driven with fantastic workflows, user interface, which is easier to learn. Where can somebody learn more about XEMR or XEMR? We have a website. We are very active on YouTube. We have social media presence where they can go to rexemr.com and have a look at what we are doing. And we also have a pretty good presence in LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. That is an awesome summary. I love your analogy, sort of linking this idea of all the things we were carrying around at one time. And now we just have this phone. I'm still carrying around a wallet, but I don't think it's going to be too much longer before even my wallet stays at home, and I just have my phone in my pocket. And I'm envisioning medical doctors, and I've heard people talk about this. We talk about the the amount of time it takes to, be seen by doctors, the amount of time it takes to hear back from doctors, the amount of time. And you just think about all of the paper pushing. Now you might have a computer inside, inside different medical offices, but then even then that computer doesn't seem to talk to the next thing. And it sounds like what you folks are doing is you are bringing all of these ideas together. I love the fact as well that, you mentioned this earlier in the episode, that you're coming out of a lot of experience in the banking industry, which it has a lot of regulation, right? So there's a lot of red tape there. And what I'm seeing here for Rex EMR, given the fact that you have that experience in your back pocket, that you're dealing with the medical industry, which again, regulations, all of those things, but you've dealt with the red tape in other industries. So to me, that just seems like such a nice, sort of connection, a nice experience that you're able to sort of leverage and build on. I'm curious, at about what phase of your company, there's maybe some people listening here who are going, holy smokes, I want to learn more about it. I'm going to say it, Rex EMR. So REX EMR, and it's one word. And, before we go into what stage of the company is at, it just reminded me of the name and where the name of the company came from. Where did you get Rex EMR? I vaguely remember you telling me about a story about potentially a family sort of member of some type.
Very interesting question, actually. In terms of how the name came about, I as a a common person, when you go to a doctor's office, all I got to see is the word RX written on a prescription, right? So that's if you actually pronounce R and X put together, it's Rex. And it so coincidentally happened that, like, when I was looking for Rex EMR and playing around with the name, Dr. J, I spoke about earlier, his dog passed away. Yeah. So that was the time we said, okay, RX, Rex, they go together.
I like it. I like the creativity, and nice honorable mention for one of the sort of founders or initial members of the team, and something that was close, or someone that was close to them. And then finally, tell us a little bit more so they know that they can find more information about Rex EMR on social media, YouTube. They can go to the website. But how about for those people who are looking at, maybe getting into some sort of investments around startups? Maybe they want to learn more about you. You were bootstrapping for a very long time, so good on you for that. I think that's the best way to go, is bootstrap for as long as you can. But I think you were telling me recently that you're actually looking to start raising some capital. So give us a little bit of information about that before we wrap up here today.
Yeah, we are at a stage where we have developed a product which encompasses all the different functionalities which the doctor requires to reduce their administrative work in their office in one ecosystem. That's the stage we are in, and we have developed the product and we have piloted it with 6 doctors. And again, going back, those 6 doctors are based out of Windsor. That's a connection to Windsor, where the whole idea started. From there, we bootstrapped. Now we are at a stage where we need money to come in. We are looking for funding to grow the organization. What are we looking at in terms of is to expand our team, to keep the costs low. We have a development team in India. We have to expand that team as well, so that we can continue with our innovation journey. We want to be at a stage where we want to drive the entire application using voice as much as possible, so that, doctors don't need to type. That's the game we want to get into. That's one. And we also want to become not just serving independent doctors. We're looking at serving independent doctors. We're looking at the dentist, and also become an enterprise-wide solution. Take it to the hospitals at a later stage, right? So that's where we want to get to. In order to do all this, we need to have investment. That's where we are. So to find out more about it, like, they can give me a call, or they can email me, then we can have a conversation. It's always better to have a conversation than just going through a pitch deck. That's something which I personally believe in.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm hopeful for you that that funding does get connected with you. It was awesome when I had the opportunity to meet and hear your story, and that's at that point where I said, "Hey, I think you'd be a great fit to share your story, if not for folks to learn from your experience and hear that story and maybe fuel them along their own entrepreneurial journeys, but also for those who are investors out there. And this is Canadian Wealth Secrets. A lot of people, when they do find an opportunity to get in with a startup that has a great product, a great plan, and great leadership, there is the opportunity to potentially do a lot of really awesome things. Just a disclaimer to those listening: we have no partnership relationship. There's no, advertisement dollars happening here, nothing like that. This was more or less just sharing a conversation. And actually, just to be honest with you, Raj, I'm rooting for you. I've worked with many startups in the past in the education space, and just hearing all of the things and the experience you have and your goals, and having the opportunity to kind of dig into this plan, I have a funny feeling that I'm going to be seeing Rex EMD quite often along the way. So good on you, my friend. Any final thoughts or big takeaways that you hope that the audience gets here from this conversation here today?
I actually wanted to touch upon how what I've learned is how Canadians generally invest into do their investments. I see that most of them go into the mortgage route. So what I would say is look at startups, like look at other way of investments, because there's high risk, but there's also high dividend coming out of this. Like, yeah, so that's what is going to, supporting small organizations is what is going to empower the economy of Canada.
I love it.
So
That, my friend,
yeah.
that is a Canadian Wealth Secret sauce for the day, which I think is really important. And really what I'm hearing you say is it's a type of diversification as well, right? So it's not necessarily it's a one or the other, all in on the market or all in on a startup, but thinking about opportunities that makes sense. Due diligence is really important. And I love how, again, as you had mentioned, for those who might be interested, that they can reach out through your website or through social media to get on a call to learn more, take a deeper dive, and see if that might be a good fit for them. I know that I've been digging through, and I'm definitely very intrigued, and I look forward to digging in some more. So thank you so much, Raj, for spending some time with us here on the Canadian Wealth Secrets podcast. And I am certain that we're going to be still in touch for quite some time.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thanks, my friend. Good luck as you're raising the capital. Chat soon.
Thank you.